Good morning, guys. My name is Melanie Lau. I am one of the students of Kinesiology 335, Physical Activity and Aging. Today, I will be talking about fencing versus the aging brain. If you're wondering who the person is in this picture, that is actually me back in my freshman year in high school, fencing. So, what is fencing? It is not the white picket fences that you see on this picture, and it's also not the fences that surrounds the house. Fencing is actually a sport. It is a sport that utilizes an equipment called a foiled blade, and the whole goal of this sport is to be able to hit the targeted area to get a point. The history of fencing started all the way in 1896. It was introduced into the Olympics until 1896, and it was introduced as foil fencing in 1956. The purpose of this was a way to spar with other people back then. But nowadays, we don't spar. We do this for competition. There are three types of fencing. On the bottom left, you see the saber. Saber is actually the faster version of fencing. The toe target is anything above the torso. The second one in the middle is the epee. This is also another slower version of fencing. Basically, the whole body is a target. So your head, your arms, your torso, and your legs are actually a target in epee. Finally, foil, which is also the type of fencing that I did back in high school, requires is in between epee and saber. It is not a fast sport, but it's also not a slow sport. Foil target areas are basically the torso, the arm, torso, and the mask. So, why were we even talking about fencing in the beginning? Well, I stumbled across this post on the Washington Post, and it was talking about fencing and affecting the brain. How are we certain that the aging fencing can help with the aging brain? So, in summary, one elder who was 69 named it was named Michael de Manche, who was 69, and he was fencing his son named Devin, who was 20 years old. They were fencing, and even though the 20-year-old Devin won, they weren't quite sure whether this can actually help with aging. So they did some prior research and they kind of came up with this statement of fencing helps keep the brain fast and accurate. It has believed that it can actually help increase memory in both young and elderly people who fence. It also can prevent some brain declines associated with age. However, is this true? Is everything that we have read about this is true? Well, we're here to find out. What do the sources actually say? Let's start with Article 1. Article 1 is talk has the title called Neural Correlates of Attentional and Executive Processing in Middle-Aged Fencers. Their whole purpose was to find out if open skill sports can help with cognitive processing and actually prevent deterioration as someone gets older. They were separated into four groups. There were middle-aged fencers, who was in an age range of 46.6 to 52.4 years old. There were young fencers, which were 20.1 to 27.9 years old. There were middle-aged non-athletes, so anyone that wasn't participating in a sport and did not have that much of a physical activity counted as a non-athlete. The middle-aged non-athlete ranged from 45.3 years old to 50.6 years old. Finally, we have the young non-athletes. There were 19.8 to 29.4 years old. So what are the methods? The methods were they were to perform two tasks. They were to do a simple reaction task, which meant that no matter what showed up on the screen, they were to respond to it. The second one was discriminative reaction task. They were to press the key as quickly as possible whenever a target appeared in front of their screen. They were only allowed to press a key when they saw a target, but anytime a non-target appeared in front of their screen, they were not to respond to it. So what were the results? They found out that The reaction times were actually slower in the older subjects, but accuracy actually stayed on par. At an event-related potential level, even though they were delayed, they were able to show that if you were a fencer, you were able to show less delay. That's actually great news. The fact that a middle-aged fencer can actually beat a young non-athlete in this type of test, that's a lot, that's a lot to say. The only thing that has mentioned was that despite both fencers doing this, they both relatively scored the same. So that's 1 point for fencing. Fencing is actually a good way to help with the aging brain. Now let's go to the second article. The second article is titled The Effects of Different Exercise Types on Visual Spatial Attention in the Elderly. 60 elderly participants were divided into an open skill, a closed skill, or a controlled skill test group according to their exercise participation experience in the past 24 months. They were then to perform a visual spatial attention task with concomitant electrophysiological recording. So, what is what sport would an open skill group do? Well, with an open skilled group, they were to play ping pong and badminton. As for the closed skills, they focused on swimming and jogging. So, what were the methods? The methods were that every time they saw a targeted location, they were either to press N or M as soon as possible whenever a green circle target appeared. They were to do that to kind of see whether their attention was able to focus on the green circle target and less on the N or M on your keyboard. So, with that, what were the results? The results show that the two exercise group actually exhibited shorter reaction times across conditions compared with the control group. Although the open and closed skills group only showed approaching between group significance of the reaction time, the open skills groups actually showed better attention, and they were able to reveal the presence of neurocognitive effects on the visual attention task in these open and closed exercise group, a significantly better performance in the open skill group. It meant that open skill sports can actually have better effects on visual spatial attention compared to closed sports. So how does this actually relate to fencing? I never mentioned fencing in this article, but how does this actually relate? Well, with fencing, fencing is actually an example of an open skilled sport. An open skilled sport is basically anything that requires the person to think prior to an action that was done. An example of open skilled would be badminton. Badminton, your goal is to be able to hit the shuttlecock over the net and prevent your opponent from hitting it. With ping pong, you're focused on the ping pong ball and you're not aware of what the next steps of that opponent would do with that ping pong ball. Fencing is similar to that. Fencing requires you to think very hard while you are in a belt. Your whole goal is to hit the target. However, you don't know what your opponent is doing as you're sparring. So that's an example of an open skilled sport. The fact that this article mentioned that the open skill sport is actually beneficial show that fencing might actually show better attention. Now that we know about all of this, how does this apply to aging? Why are we spending the past few minutes talking about fencing? Well, memory is actually affected as one gets older. The hippocampus, which actually is in charge of your memory, actually shrinks 2% per year once you reach the age of 65. So that means once you turn 65, your memory starts to slowly go away. However, that's not always the case. Dementia, Alzheimer's disease, and mild cognitive impairment is actually the sixth leading cause of death. It is expected that 13.5 million people are expected to be diagnosed with dementia by 2050. That's a very scary statistic. The fact that we're not even sure what age we're going to get dementia shows that this is a very alarming issue. Dementia is defined as the loss of cognitive functioning that only affects the daily life. So, how does fencing actually take part in this? Well, with the two articles, it has proven that it could be better for memory and can be better as someone age older. Fencing is not only a COVID-19 safe sport. After all, you're able to stay 6 feet apart, you wear a glove, and instead of shaking hands, you elbow shake. Basically, fencing is one of the ways that you can continue to do despite this pandemic and still be able to keep your memory in check despite what your age is. Here are my resources, and I hope you enjoy my presentation. Thank you.